Torrin Collins is still in first place here in Edmonton, but his competitors seem to be pushing themselves to get closer. Will he be able to remain ahead?
It is time for race number 6 in round number 3 of the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship Pro Supersport class, as there is Laurent La Liberté Girard getting set for one of his 6 races this weekend between Pro Supersport and Pro Superbike. Alex Michel as well, second on the podium in race number 1, Colin.
Both looking for Ironman performances, riding almost every race that's offered to a pro competitor here at RAD Torque. And there is the man who has been building his reputation at an alarming rate so far this year.
He has been all over the top step this season and claims the top spot in qualification as well.
Yep, strong effort by all of our front runners here. John Lang took the hit because he registered just slightly high on our official series DynoJet dyno, just slightly above the rear wheel horsepower limit. That dropped him a position and moved him beside Michel, who's of course the climbing man in the series at the moment.
Sebastien Tremblay qualifying in 3rd position officially and unable to finish race number 1 after having a mechanical issue as Mac Wheel and Marco Souza round out the grid here to go around RAD Torque Raceway in Edmonton, Alberta.
Have a good look at the track here. It's an interesting setup. We are all at one side of the track, the part in the foreground, but the far end is the sort of most exciting, flowing, interesting, challenging part.
Plenty of camber going through sections 4 and 5 here through those turns and heading towards the back half as we see plenty of overtaking opportunities in 7 and 8. Let's head down to our Bridgestone pit reporter Sarah Said with more on the struggles of Sebastien Tremblay.
Thanks, Marshall. Defending champion Sebastien Tremblay was forced to exit race 1 here in Edmonton after facing a technical issue. His crew believes the pit speed limiter on his Suzuki GSX-R 750 was malfunctioning. The crew says they think they have been able to fix it and Tremblay will be participating in race 2 here in Edmonton, but they are unsure if it'll be fully resolved during the race. This leaves Tremblay 45 points from current championship leader Torrin Collins with just 4 races left in the season. Back to you.
Thank you, Sarah. As we get set for 18 laps, the red flag has cleared the grid. We take a look at the Power Sports TO starting lights. They are out and we are full throttle. In race 1, it was Andrew Van Winkle getting the whole shot. Better start from Sebastien Tremblay this time. And to the outside tries Torrin Collins, but it is Tremblay through in turn 1.
And Collins was fairly careful that time. He seemed to settle for 3rd, which is not his typical behavior. 3 Suzukis at the front, but Sebastien Tremblay finally with cleared track in front of him for the first time this season.
And can he make the most of it? That is the question now as we see a move here into 2nd position. Torrin Collins looks like he slid his way up and plenty of bottlenecking through the midfield is very tight. And now it looks like, is that Alex Michel going off? And John Lang looks like he's down as well.
Definitely some kind of incident there. It looked to me like Michel was checking up, trying to make room. And yeah, this is not good. And Lang's situation there suggests he is injured.
And a red flag is out immediately here as you see everyone at the front of the field throwing out the leg to make sure that they slow this field down safely and slowly in the Pro Supersport category as Alex Michel and John Lang down, and Lang looking to be in some discomfort and staying on the track, so they absolutely had to red flag.
More than half the field saw that incident happen, so they're well aware it was likely to be a red, and it's a very long lap, and here we can see Lang cutting over, and Michel tries. Amazing that Michel saves it, but he just runs out of space in there. I don't know what happens with Lang. It was like he maybe was in the wrong gear or something and then got spit off. Here we go on board facing backwards with Lang. Keep an eye out to our right. There's Michel, and there he clips. He manages to catch his balance, which is remarkable, and goes heading out into the canola, but then Lang falls down.
Certainly threw Lang off his rhythm. Hope he escapes any major injuries. The red flag is out here at RAD Torque Raceway. Portions of the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship are brought to you in part by Importations Thibault, Canadian Kawasaki Motors, and EBC Brakes and Clutches. Closed captioning for the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship is brought to you in part by MotorcycleCourse.com, Keen Truck Incorporated, and Revs for RAD. Welcome back to Rad Torque Raceway. We are down to 14 laps after a red flag incident. As our Bridgestone pit reporter Sarah said, had a chance to catch up with the Speed Factory 67 Kawasaki rider Alex Michel.
Alex, can you tell us what happened out there on the course?
Yeah, so on the first lap, I was behind the three guys in fourth place. And turn 8, John made a move on the inside, and he stayed on the A side. That became the outside in corner 9 and 10. I think he didn't know I was still on the inside. He cut back to the apex, and unfortunately, I hit him in the back of his bike, and we both crashed.
Great insight there from Alex Michel as we get set to go once again. John Lang not on the grid here as we are down to 14 laps. Torrin Collins settles in once again with the Power Sports TO starting lights. They are out, and the drive from that Octagon Energy Services Suzuki flies away from first on the grid.
Good start there by Collins. Need to mention that Justin Napick, who was one of our top locals in our first race for this class today, he opted to sit this one out. Ian Wall, who would also be expected to be amongst the front runners, crashed in our practice on Thursday, so we're missing a couple of the Edmonton racers.
Always makes the Bridgestone CSBK feel deeper and more talented to have those fast locals, but right now it is the fast local Torrin Collins controlling out in front of Sebastian Tremblay. Andrew Van Winkle, who finished back in 6th position in race number 1, is the last step on the podium, and Elliot Vieira giving chase to him in 4th position.
Well, we've been kind of waiting to see this because Collins has been, my words, trash-talking Seb Tremblay a little bit in the contrasts of their riding style. Tremblay had such a great start in our first race. Now Collins is in front, but it's going to be fun to see. And Van Winkle on that 600 Suzuki against the two 750s, as usual, is closer than he should be.
Alex Michel remounting after his incident with John Lang that caused the red flag here that shortened us down to 14 laps. He's in 5th position. The Iron Man, Laurent Laliberté-Girard, as well, competing in 6 races this weekend. He carries himself in 6th position right now.
There you can see Collins hanging out that left foot, catching his balance as he steers into the turn. Of course, that is not a style that many of the other riders have. Tremblay doesn't do that. We have noticed in Superbike, Ben Young is occasionally doing this now, and we know that Ben learned to do it in Suzuka as a way to just try and cool off and relax a little bit during those long endurance stints.
You can see Torrin Collins out in front with Sebastian Tremblay latching on to him. Andrew Van Winkle trying to stay in the conversation here as they make their way back towards the start-finish straight to complete lap number 1 officially.
Triple headers here at Edmonton. This is our second of 3 middleweight class races, and got to mention, Van Winkle looked really good yesterday. He did eventually fall down out of second, but he had a good race and had good pace.
As they pick up the drive here, heading down into turn number 1 as they cross the stripe. And immediately it is a 118.750 for Torrin Collins leading this race.
Yeah, not quite the blistering pace we've seen, but still really strong and shows that the track is still good. So it has been a very good weekend so far in terms of grip and getting the most lap time as they head through that revamped bus stop chicane.
How much do you think that the camber in this corner leans into what Torrin Collins likes to do?
I think everybody likes the camber in terms of we don't have many turns with camber in Canada, so it's fun. I think everything about this track just suits the way Collins rides the motorcycle, and he's quite blunt that this is the place he was looking forward to. He just thinks it's a good fit for him, and weirdly, most of the guys on the tour like the big, fast-flowing tracks like CTMP upcoming. Collins not so much, and that's strange, particularly because several of the tracks he races at in the States are those kinds of tracks.
I was about to say his greatest challenge might be the 4th and final round of the Bridgestone CSBK season, but we also said that in round number 2 when he was going out east to Atlantic Motorsport Park in Schumanacadie, Nova Scotia. But from coast to coast, he has been incredibly strong so far this season, including the 32nd victory in race number 1, an all-time Pro Supersport record for the delta between him and 2nd position.
Well, things could have gone better for Collins on the East Coast, but when things were going right, which was practice qualifying in the second race, he was putting on a clinic of how you can ride that track in a method that most people thought you could not ride that track. So, not much to say about Collins other than people who thought they'd figured out what was going to go wrong were way off the mark.
And as you expect with great talent, just continue to doubt them and see what they do as very few doubters in the paddock at this point in the Bridgestone CSBK season, and there is certainly one man who is deemed with the task of trying to track him down and claw back some points. It's the #1 plate of Sebastian Tremblay sitting in second right now, who is slightly off the pace as Collins continues to push forward, but Sebastian Tremblay doing an excellent job trying to stay with Torrin Collins. His dominance throughout this season is unquestioned as the Octagon Energy Services 71 Suzuki rides on here at RAD Torque. Welcome back to RAD Torque Raceway here in Edmonton, Alberta, as Torrin Collins leads out in front of Sebastian Tremblay. Andrew Van Winkle in third, Elliot Vieira fourth, and Alex Michel is in fifth. On lap 3, Torrin Collins threw in a 1:18.320. That is better than his qualification pace, and he continues to be in the mid-118s, Colin.
Number 33 is the Ducati 955 Desmo V Twin, sponsored by GP Bikes of Elliot Vieira, and he's been having a decent season, but not what he was hoping for, and he had to kind of ride up through the pack yesterday, and we seem to see a bike that is not working quite as well as it used to. We're not sure why, but Elliot doesn't have the ultimate pace. Remember, previously he's been with Tremblay at the front.
You know that Elliot and his team putting plenty of work in to try and find answers on that GP Bikes Ducati and fighting their way up towards the front. Would love to see him get into a battle, whether it be with Collins or anywhere in the podium positions here in this one, but currently sitting in fourth spot, trailing in behind Van Winkle, Tremblay, and Collins.
And you can see Van Winkle. Van Winkle's not that far in front, and not that far behind is Michel, who probably is just trying to catch his breath after being involved in that incident. And there's nothing worse than being stuck out on the track while the ambulance is there and wondering if the other guy got hurt and all that kind of stuff. So Michel doing a good job, and of course Michel is in a strong position in the point, so he needs a result out of all of this.
Nathan Playford in the background there almost had a moment as he was wiggling around, almost popped out of the seat coming out of one of the final corners, but he sits down in 7th position right now. Mac Wheelie behind him, Marco Souza sitting in 9th spot, and Laurent Laliberté-Girard continues to hold on to that 6th position as we see the gap between Vieira and Michel.
And Playford had a big incident with his Ducati early on last season, and we didn't see him for a while, so this is kind of a comeback tour for him, and it's been pretty strong so far.
Doing a good job being able to pilot that machine, as you see Vieira controlling the pace, sitting in that 4th position. Alex Michel trying to close down that gap as much as he possibly can.
Heading into the far west side, the flowing section of the racetrack, and here you can see where Vieira did some happy hunting in our previous round. He and Lang had a pretty interesting dispute for a while.
So you see Michel trying to close it down. Takes a lot of mental fortitude to be able to go through that lap 1 red flag instant for Alex Michel and get back on the bike and go back to trying to close down the gap and pushing, especially through this section where he had the incident.
I think this is crucial, though, that if you get locked into a battle with somebody, you don't think about anything except trying to make time, and that's a good way to get your head out of whatever was distracting you previously. Now we're back up near the front. There's our reigning champion, Tremblay, the man who pioneered the GSXR 750 in our series 2 years ago.
Closing down the gap is Andrew Van Winkle. You heard the rev limiter there as well coming through with Sebastian Tremblay and that GSXR 750 as well for ST Motorsports Suzuki as he heads down through the roundabout section, and Andrew Van Winkle on the Mountain View Motorsports Suzuki trying to find a way to close down that gap.
On board through the carousel, which is the turn with the camber that you like so much, Marshall, and it gives you an idea that there are many lines you can use through that part of the track, and the riders do enjoy it.
As we have crossed the midway point right now, lap number 8 of 14 as it stands, and once again back onto the pace is Torrin Collins, a 1:19.232, so throwing those in as quickly as he possibly can. And you see the gap closing more and more between these two as the battle rages on at RAD Torque.
Well, I think this is a blood in the water situation, and our drone shot really showed that Van Winkle is close enough now that he is not worried about lap times. He is racing the reigning champ, Seb Tremblay, and he is on the move.
And Andrew Van Winkle not tracing the lines left behind by Sebastian Tremblay, but creating his own to try and find as much pace as possible as they head towards the start-finish stripe.
Two of the smoothest riders on the tour, chasing down Collins, who's probably the most aggressive rider on the tour.
And looks inside to turn number 1. Won't get the job done there, although he does take a look, and straightening up is Sebastian Tremblay. Man, Van Winkle turns around to apologize as he threw that into turn 2.
Yeah, I don't think that was the plan. I think it was spontaneous, and I'll bet you money Van Winkle is embarrassed about that, and he's not going to enjoy the TSN coverage too much.
Well, it looked as though Sebastian Tremblay was shocked by this as well as he turned right into it, but man, did Van Winkle ever come from a long way back.
Yeah, ambitious move that really didn't work, and the good news is there's a fair amount of asphalt there. They've tidied things up in that part of the track, which is good because it meant that Tremblay had a little road left after this incident. And of course, you can see classic example of how racers do things. Van Winkle is looking way past Tremblay at that point, hoping that he can make the move work, and it didn't. Full marks that he gave it up.
Plenty of hands on the head in the grandstand in behind there as the move is completed. Van Winkle into second position here at RAD Tour. Portions of the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship are brought to you in part by Importations Thibault, Canadian Kawasaki Motors, and EBC Brakes and Clutches. Welcome back to RAD Torque Raceway as we continue to rip our way around at lap number 10 of 14. This race shortened from 18 down to 14 after a red flag incident on lap number 1 between Alex Michel and John Lang. Michel back into this race, currently sitting in 5th spot as Torrin Collins continues to lead. And in the background there you see Michel battling against Vieira. Right now it's Andrew Van Winkle up against Sebastian Tremblay fighting for 2nd spot on the podium. And for Andrew Van Winkle, the reason that he is involved here in Bridgestone CSBK, it is all to do with his dad Jim, the energy and the effort he's put into supporting his son.
Oh, I can attribute 100% to it because if I didn't have him, I wouldn't be on a bike. So he's the one that got me into dirt bikes, and that slowly progressed to mini bikes, to bigger bikes. Just kept snowballing, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And over the years, I've just gotten better. He started me out, and then quickly I surpassed what he knew. And then he searched for someone else to give a lending hand, and it's just, okay, well, they're struggling to help me now, so they help me find someone else, and it just keeps doing that. And without him, I wouldn't have the contacts that I have now that have helped supply bikes and helped me actually grow in my career. So he's 100% the reason I'm here.
Jim Van Winkle will tell you that he doesn't want his son to move up a class onto the next faster, bigger motorcycle until he feels he can command that bike and can be in a position to charge and to win on it. So that's interesting given that he's currently on a GSXR 600, mostly against GSXR 750s, so he doesn't quite have the tools at his disposal that perhaps their program would like.
Incredibly talented 18-year-old though, and being able to weave his way throughout the Bridgestone CSBK Pro Supersport field as we see the GP Bikes Ducati here of Elliot Vieira up against the Speed Factory 67 Kawasaki of Alex Michel, who is absolutely tracking down the 33.
And we got to think about not that long ago, we had the situation where Vieira had come from Guyana where he was one of the top guys. He had an old Kawasaki, then he had some old Yamahas, and then he got on the Ducati and kind of established his reputation. And Michel is now in that establish your reputation. So Vieira probably not happy with where he is on the track. Michel probably pretty happy to be with Vieira.
Michel competing the last couple of marches down at Bike Week in the Daytona 200, building his skills, building his confidence, and then taking that back north here to Bridgestone CSBK the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt to follow someone like Vieira who has lots of experience and is generally a pretty smooth rider. And you got to think about Michel and the points because he has been racking up decent finishes, and this looks like another at least reasonable points effort.
Andrew Van Winkle on that last lap around, the quickest bike on track, running a 1:19.612, and now you see Torrin Collins coming through on lap number 12, and he betters that with a 1:19.567.
Yeah, so he probably watched the board, saw that he lost a little tiny bit of time. He's got clear running right now. Van Winkle and Tremblay are preoccupied with each other, so it's not a surprise that Collins can pick up a little bit of time.
Plenty of drama right there in turn number 2 between Van Winkle and Tremblay earlier on in this race, as Tremblay surprised by the efforts of Andrew Van Winkle and the Mountain View Motorsports Suzuki making his way through. But the ST Motorsports Suzuki, as these two constructors on the same bike battling against each other for that second spot on the podium, as Collins is clear away out in front.
And you could get a sense of Tremblay trying to look through the bike in front of him to see if there's an opportunity to make a move, and this is what happens when you have as many wins in this class as Tremblay does. You're the reigning champion. You're the guy who established the GSXR 750 platform as the bike to beat in the middleweight division.
And never at a lack for confidence is Sebastian Tremblay, but it really does feel like Colin, one of the wiser, savvier men when it comes to overtaking and picking his spots.
Yeah, and unfortunately because of that, he tends to be on the short end of some ambitious efforts that perhaps are poorly judged.
You see Van Winkle curving his way through there, taking a bit of a defensive line, straightening that GSXR 600 up, as way out in front is Torrin Collins beginning the final lap, as he is about 8.5 seconds clear.
Yeah, and that is impressive. Not as impressive as what we saw earlier in the day, which was just a remarkable margin of victory by Collins. And this class has been around for a long, long time and has been dominated by people like Jordan Zoke and Don Monroe, and it has a long history of establishing rising stars in middleweight.
Van Winkle against Tremblay for that second spot on the podium. Michel Vieira battling as well for 4th position, but out in front, it is the Octagon Energy Services Suzuki of Torrin Collins, taking a little peek over the shoulder there one final time as he gets a good look and realizes that he can start to shut this thing down and head towards, sailing towards yet another victory in the Pro Supersport class.
Classic Freddie Spencer move there. Big 180 turn allows you to look back without having to really strain your neck to see where they are. And of course, he knows the margin's around 10 seconds, so that was the ideal opportunity. And if he sees Van Winkle and Tremblay together, two things. One, he knows they're racing, so that's good for him. It's slowing them down. Also, he and Van Winkle are good friends, so he's probably hoping Van Winkle can edge Tremblay.
Yeah, it's almost a shame that we don't have the Jumbotrons here around RAD Tour. He could take a little look up and appreciate the battle happening between Sebastian Tremblay and Andrew Van Winkle, his friend. But in the place that he announced his presence in Bridgestone CSBK Superbike last year, it's another victory. Once again, you see it is Torrin Collins bringing home P1 in front of his dad, Rupert. Andrew Van Winkle head down, takes home P2, as well as the ST Motorsports Suzuki of Sebastian Tremblay. Great battle in 3rd position, but being able to get back into good shape here for the 2nd and 3rd finishers, and no change for Torrin Collins up front.
Yeah, and he's trying to do a wheelie. I don't know what's going on. He's looking around like something's up with the motorcycle, but this isn't Shubenacadie from the last race when he had a technical problem late in the race. He seems happy enough to wave and say hello to the marshals.
If there's ever a time to have a mechanical issue, it's on the cool down lap. Torrin Collins continuing to control the pace from start to finish on that Suzuki GSXR 750 as he takes the top step from Van Winkle and Tremblay. A tremendous effort. Let's head down to our Bridgestone pit reporter, Sarah Said, with our winner.
Congratulations on another win, Torrens. How's it feel?
Yeah, it feels amazing. As I said before, it's really good to be back in Alberta at my home race, and yeah, I couldn't be doing any better than I thought. Pole position, race one win, race 2 win. Hopefully I can repeat it tomorrow.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It was a 24-point spread after race number 1. Following race number 2, 29 points the advantage for Collins over his friend Andrew Van Winkle.
One more race left here in Edmonton, 2 more in Canadian Tire Motorsport Park next month, and Collins more than a race in hand, so it's he's in the driver's seat no matter how you look at it.
Michel Vieira and Tremblay, an extremely tight midfield as the Constructors' Championship continues to be dominated by Suzuki out in front of Ducati, and Kawasaki holding court as well, up in the triple digits. But for the most part, today the story was Torrin Collins controlling the pace out in front, managing the race exceptionally well, and maintaining his lead in the Bridgestone CSBK Pro Supersport Championship.